This is Dave with No Chaser, and for today's episode, it is brought to you by Steve from Michigan, which I'm really excited about. Steve had this great topic idea of exploring what Delirium Tremens are, DTs. So DTs is something that is, okay, let me put it this way. People have hangovers from drinking. People go through withdrawals from drinking. And then you have what are called the Delirium Tremens. Now, Delirium Tremens sounds like a Harry Potter villain, like Delirium Tremens, like the Dementors or something. If that sounds scary, it should, because it's honestly terrifying. So I'm really glad Steve brought this up, and through our correspondence, actually, he also provided a super thanks, which is awesome. Thank you for supporting the show. But he also, in our correspondence back and forth, he talked about maybe even doing like a scared straight sort of thing where people talk about just having the shakes in the morning and that's the DTs. No. That is not the DTs. So the DTs are basically, imagine this. Imagine that you are in your normal state, and then you get the flu, and then somebody slips you some acid, and then you have a bad trip. That is what is like having the DTs are. It is like you not only go through like the flu, like sickness of vomiting and temperatures and fever symptoms, like you go through everything. You go through basketball diaries, like heroin addiction, sort of like throwing up, vomiting, shaking. You're worried about dying, which is a real fear because you could have a seizure. And then on top of all this, you have you start hallucinating. You start seeing tracers and shadow people. Like, I'm wearing this shirt right now, we're all mad here because as me and Steve were talking about, you also see things in the shadows, like a Cheshire cat smile, in Alice in Wonderland.
Where in the world do you suppose that...
Lose something?
Oh! Well, I was... No, I was just wondering...
Oh, that's quite all right. One moment, please. Ooh.
Yeah, I always thought that to be creepy, too. It's like, you see things and it's not fully like an acid trip, where in the sense you're going through withdrawals, but you're also not sure of what reality is, in a sense, because it's so vivid. And the shadow people, some people talk about saying the Hat Man or something, where it's just... I'm laughing about it, but it's a harrowing experience. Like I said, if any of you out there has had a bad trip on mushrooms or on LSD or anything, just imagine that while you're also incredibly sick. And some people, which by the way, talk about that scared straight thing, some people had DTs that were so bad, the experience was so bad that people stopped drinking, which is good. Honestly, if you could find a reason to quit drinking if you're an alcoholic, I wouldn't wish the DTs on anybody. And, what me and Steve had talked about is people saying that they had the DTs as a sense of, they had a really bad hangover or were withdrawing or something. This is what I always come back to as, a problem with comparisons. Some people say they have a headache when they have a migraine, or some people say that they have the flu when they have a cold. Now, if you've ever had a migraine, it is much different from a headache. If you've ever had the flu, it is much different from a cold. And that's the same thing with having a hangover compared to the DTs. This is also the comparison problem you find in mental illness too. So some people will say that I suffered depression when they were just kind of sad, when it's because people have a relative sense of what the thing is, but they don't realize the extent of how bad it could be. It's also the same thing when people are in addiction, in terms of alcoholism or addiction, where they go, yeah, I have a drinking problem, it's hard for me to stop. It's no, you don't understand. I have to drink to survive. And I'm saying this with the severity because the DTs are, I'll give you one story. I remember one time I was actually in a psych ward. Fun times. We're all mad here, by the way. I was in a psych ward because I basically had drank myself into I was getting no sleep, and I was almost suicidal. And I got to this point where I was They just admitted me because I was a hot mess to say the least. And I started going through the actual delirium tremens, not a hangover, not just withdrawals, but I started going through the delirium tremens, and I actually thought I was going insane. And what started occurring was that I started having the spins, but not only having the spins, but with the spins, I started seeing people coming in, and I started having flashbacks of what were actually like real people in my life at the time talking to me. And again, there's a part of me that knows that I'm really sick and this is not like actually occurring, but when it's so vivid, you're like, maybe this is real. So, I mean, this video is also for people, not only that, like, if you just wonder what like delirium tremens are, this is what it really is. It's like, it's an experience that is like true, like harrowing. And some people, like I said, your fear of like dying is not necessarily just fabricated. Like people do die from seizures. So while you have like these crazy hallucinations, you also have a very realistic fear that you could die, because if you're like detoxing on the couch, if you're just trying to like grin and bear it, when you're going through that, there's a real chance that you could seizure yourself to death. And so, you know, like I said, alcoholism, the drinking is so hard to put down. So if you could imagine that some people stopped solely because of the DTs, that's how bad it is. Like I said, I wouldn't wish them on anybody. And, you know, it's one of those things where I don't think people don't talk about it as much, because, you know, if you explain that you've had it and you haven't quit drinking, then you have to admit that you're an alcoholic. Like, you can't complain at work that you went through this awful experience of the DTs if you haven't stopped drinking, because it'd be like, you'd be like, you know, it's one thing if you quit drinking for 10 years and you're willing and open to share that, like with coworkers or with family, like, you know, like I had the DTs like 10 years ago and it was this awful thing, and let me tell you about this experience. But, you know, if you just had it like a couple days ago and you are not ready to quit drinking and you can't find yourself that you've stopped or anything like that, and you have to go through that experience and you have to go to work the next day after one of the scariest experiences of your life, like a literal near-death experience, my heart goes out to you. So this video is also for you people out there. Like, you know, I post this video like just whenever I can. If you're watching this now and if you're drinking right now, you know, this is a channel of no judgment or anything like that. I hope that you can find a way to stop, but, you know, just be safe if you can. Like, I don't know what area of the world you're in, like what type of healthcare you have, but in all seriousness, if you've been drinking for months on end very heavily and you're trying to go cold turkey, just go to some place if you can where there's some medical supervision. One, to not just die, but two, to help you with this very real thing that is like truly a waking nightmare. On that fun note, again, thanks Steve for the topic idea. Like I said, I think it's important to talk about, people have a real conception of what the reality of it is. Again, thank you for the support too. And like I said, if you want to throw out topic ideas, you know, I have the membership tiers, things you can subscribe at least maybe just once, and you can, I can do a full video dedicated to that, depending on what the topic is. It's whatever. You can correspond with me at the No Chaser email at nochaser2022@gmail.com, and I can do more videos like this. Other than that, be well. I almost knocked the camera over.